Hi, this is Reena Jairam from Humans of Kowai. Every journey has a story, and every story is an inspiration. Today, they are about to hear a story which has touched many hearts, and it is indeed awe-inspiring. Today, we have our guest of honor, Mrs. Santhya Vikram, the visionary behind Yellow Train, to share her experience of this 15 years of incredible journey. Welcome, Santhya. Thank you so much, Mrs. Santhya Vikram, for getting agreeing to get featured in our podcast in spite of your busy schedule. It's a great honor having you here, and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
You begin your career in a corporate world, and then this thought of being an educationist was there with you, I think, from your childhood.
Yes.
And then you leave the corporate world and you get into the field of education. And that's when Yellow Train, the idea seeped in. So could you just walk us through that journey of how it, from the inception to what it is here?
Sure. I think the dream was alive from when I was a small child. Because I grew up in schools which was an antithesis to childhood and celebration of childhood. And I myself had a very difficult childhood with illnesses and an inability to walk for a long period of time.
Okay.
So when I read this book, Toto-chan, for the first time, which is a story of a young girl in Japan, and in a secret school where children of all kinds flourished, and that book spoke to me. And I think that was the beginning of the dream. And ever since, I've always felt that there must be a school where children are loved and celebrated for who they are.
Wonderful.
Because schools have become a place which are very intensely performative. And learning needs to be measured. And everything needs to be measured, right? So for me, in my head, school was about childhood. School was a place where children lived and grew. And so this dream was always alive. But in my adult life, I got lost because I studied English literature and I wanted to be a teacher. And this was somewhere like 95, 98. I realized if you were a teacher, you could earn something like 3,000 rupees. And my own sense for what is financial freedom that I was inviting into my life, and this reality didn't meet. So I went on to business school, then I went on to do corporate life. But I know that every maybe a year, once in a year, or every month, there would be this haunting question of when am I going to quit this and when am I going to do what I really love to do and what I now feel I was destined to do. So that question accompanied me. I took several sabbaticals. I went into work with autistic children, went into work with government schools, and then I would come back to my corporate world.
Yeah.
And I think those were years of really the dream sort of growing inside me till there came a time where I said, yes, I'm now ready. And I had by then my own 2 children. And that's when I think the need to really birth this became stronger and stronger. And then there came a day 15 years ago that I just came to Coimbatore and began as a small dream.
Like, as in any specific emotional connect with Coimbatore? Why Coimbatore?
Me and my husband come from Coimbatore. Our roots are in Coimbatore.
Okay.
And therefore, it felt like Coimbatore would offer us a home to this possibility, better than a Bangalore, which is also like home, could have. And also, one felt like the possibility financially of buying land, building, would be more viable for us in Coimbatore than it would have been in Bangalore. And so we chose Coimbatore, but I was extremely skeptical of coming to Coimbatore because in my mind, Coimbatore was a smaller city And I had this idea that it was less progressive than Bangalore. But I think 15 years of having lived here, now my colleagues and friends from Mumbai and Bangalore who run World of Schools, they ask me, how did Coimbatore receive this idea in such a rich manner that people in Mumbai and Bangalore are struggling to manifest? So now I have a different perception of Coimbatore.
Yeah.
And how Coimbatore has embraced this dream and how this community has made it their dream. But I didn't have that wisdom 15 years ago. I felt that this was not the best location for me to come to. And I sort of lived with that idea in the early years. But I have now a very different perspective and a different story about this city.
Coimbatore has embraced you all with open arms.
Yes.
And I think Coimbatore has played a pivotal role in making your dream come.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
So you started off, Yellow Train began with 3 kids, a small yard.
Yes.
And now you are a family of 750.
Yeah.
So 15 years is not a short duration. You would have faced a lot of challenges and your dream seems to be out of the box. So what were the setbacks 15 years back, like when you started with 3 kids, and it would have taken you a lot of time to, grow. The period to grow.
Yeah.
So just tell us about that.
I think when you ask me this question, Reena, first story that comes, by the way, I'm a storyteller and I teach, and I think I can't teach a class without a story or a poem ever. So one of the stories that I feel very closely connected to is someone whose grandmother, shared this story, and the grandchild shared this with me, and she's now maybe 60 or so. Rabindranath Tagore, when he started Shanti Niketan, he actually was met by a benevolent man who asked him, I want to support Shanti Niketan and I want to offer you this large sum of money. In response to that, Tagore told him that, I actually, if I had a choice, I wouldn't ask for your money because I'm going to ask you for something else. And Tagore knew that this man had a daughter.
Okay.
And Tagore told him that I want your daughter to go to Shanti Niketan because that's for me a bigger gift than the money that you would offer the school. And for me, that's a very archetypal story.
Yeah.
Because it's a story of how an idea that is countercultural, or an idea that's perhaps ahead of its time, or an idea that maybe is very difficult for people to embrace, needs, I think, a subscription more than it needs financial and other gifts. So I think one of the earliest, I wouldn't say struggle, earliest places that one needed to work was really, how do you articulate your vision so people feel a resonance? And I also recognize that as parents, when there's a radical idea, the first feeling that meets us is fear.
True.
One feels that there's a security in a traditional schooling that manifested a certain kind of success in the world, a college admission, a job. And a school that questions some of this, questions examination, questions a certain method of teaching, one feels one was gambling with something, right? And there's a lot of fear. So early years, we had to do a lot of conversation with parents, right? In earliest years, it was in kindergarten, we never taught the children how to read and write. There was no letters of the alphabet. There was no numeracy. And people found that unthinkable,
Yeah.
And one needed to talk about early childhood development. One needed to talk about neurological development. One needed to talk about child development in the light of anthroposophy of Rudolf Steiner's work, in order to get them a picture that by choosing unhurried childhood, we weren't weakening anything for the child. Instead, we were actually giving a solid, robust, grounded foundation which every child needed and deserved.
Yeah.
So that work was in the early years, I think, not easy.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
I think the second task, which was a struggle, then continues to remain a struggle, is finding teachers. And I say this not only with respect to Yellow Train, I think this is a problem in India. And when I talk to my colleagues in Europe and the UK and the United States, I feel it's a problem all over the world, which is you go to any school and ask the children what do they want to be when they grow up. They would tell you, of course, the traditional things of wanting to be in engineering, medicine, law, and now architecture, and so many things. And now even politicians, I think a lot of young people aspire to be that. But you're going to invariably find maybe half a hand that says, I want to be a teacher. And that hasn't changed from the time when I was a student. It hasn't changed now. Of course, Yellow Train children, a lot of them say, I want to be a teacher.
I think they take an inspiration from you.
I think they see this as a beautiful journey. But the reality remains that teaching remains in the shadows. Teacher remains as a choice for people for whom all other doors are shut. And I think that's the tragedy of education today.
100%. That's the fact. I mean, that's a reality. We just can't deny that. As you said, it's teaching has always been an alternate career for most of them. So
yeah. So when I had to contend with that, it was very disillusioning. You know, to encounter that was extremely frustrating and disillusioning. But I think we worked in a manner where I think we changed that narrative, because at Yellow Train, we have teachers. Not many of us have B.Ed actually. Yeah. Not many of us trained to be a teacher. But, you know, we come from all walks of life, from corporate to dentist to architect to medical doctors to people who've actually studied to pursue something else, and people who felt a calling. People who said, I want to work with children and education, and therefore chose to become teachers. And of course, we had to educate ourselves. We had to work with pedagogy. We had to work with the philosophy, and we had to teach ourselves how to be teachers. And I feel that this approach has worked for us, continues to work for us.
Yeah.
So we are not necessarily looking at teachers who have taught for 20 years, but we're looking for people who are saying, I'm passionate about education. That makes a difference. Love children.
Yes.
And I'm prepared to do anything in order to meet these two needs of mine, to invest my life with children and to change the narrative of education. So I think that's been our approach. But finding good teachers has not been easy.
That always had been a challenge from you started Yellow.
Day one has been hard. I think now we are at a place, because the school is recognized as the top 5-10 alternate schools in the country. We have educators looking for alternate education from other parts of the country, coming to us in search of, this space that nurtures a certain form of education. So it isn't as difficult in the last 5 years, but the first decade, it was a challenge.
It was a challenge.
Yeah.
And apart from these challenges that you face, when you begin to take baby steps of your dream, financially to get Yellow Train started, you sold your house.
Yeah.
And that was a big leap of faith.
Yeah, that was our first seed capital.
I mean, that takes a lot of immense guts to do that. So, and your husband was very supportive.
Yeah.
So can you tell us, and another thing which is very different is you approached parents.
Yes.
So could you tell how did that happen and how welcoming was it?
Yeah. That's a story that I will speak with great joy, because it's a very special story. But just early part of the journey, we were corporate, professionals, and very successful at that when I first decided to quit. Vikram held on to his job for a few more years. And when we decided to, invest in Yellow Train, I had all these ideals of having a small school and the kind of infrastructure one imagined and dreamt of. It didn't in the beginning seem financially so viable. And we also knew we were going to take a long time before we established the roots, because the ideas that we were working with were countercultural, were new to this community. So at the very beginning, I think we sold our house and that became the first seed capital. And we did it with great joy. Of course, then we went to the bank. And as the school was growing, there came a time where our first primary building couldn't hold the children anymore. And the growth came earlier than we anticipated.
Yeah.
And that's something that I didn't foresee. And I remember still when primary building was inaugurated and some colleagues saying, this will be one of the many buildings that the school would have. And I looked at them and said, what are they actually saying? Because this seemed already like a huge manifestation. And when we were actually spilling out of the corridors and sitting, under the trees, there was no classroom anymore. And we had to build the middle school. We had to have the labs. And we felt that if we went to the bank and if we had to pay those interest rates, our operational expenditure would be, or, our P&L would look strained.
Oh.
And I also felt that when financially any institution, even an NGO or a spiritual organization or any institution, a social enterprise, when financially one is struggling, you are struggling spiritually and in every other manner, because that fuels a lot.
True.
And we recognize that if we were to come up with this expansion, we are going to struggle financially.
True.
And we wanted to find alternative ways to cope with that. So I felt at that time I could go to the parents, and I don't know how this idea came. We said, hey, let's go to the parents, but we felt like, let's not ask for a donation, because it seems like we could, somehow it didn't seem right to go and ask for a donation to build a building. So we felt like, why not we go to parents and ask them for interest-free loans? Where is the challenge? The challenge is the interest on the borrowing. And that's what was going to pinch the P&L. So we said, let's go and ask people to give us interest-free loans. And instead of asking one big body, which would be the bank, let's go and ask 100 people. And I've got no financial background, so I have no access to these kind of models that of course exist in the world, but it just seemed like the right thing to do. And when I thought of that, the first feeling was very intimidating, to meet a large body of people who trusted their children into a system which is so radical. And now you tell them that we don't have the money to build and expand, and now you need to offer us an interest-free loan. So we said, okay, let's make this more wieldy for my own nervous system. Let's meet them in small groups of about 30.
Yeah.
So it's warm, cozy, intimate. I can look into the eyes of every person. I can see and feel what they are sitting with. So we planned to invite people in small groups of 30. And we, instead of doing one large meeting, we were to do several meetings over a whole week. And there was one particular morning that I was going to meet the parents. And I had no idea that previous evening, Narendra Modi addressed the country and presented the demonetization plan.
Oh.
And I was going to meet the parents next morning at 9 a.m. with my first set of meeting. And I finished the meeting, and there were a few hands up, and they said, maybe it's not the most appropriate question to ask, but will you accept money, cash?
Yeah.
And, and many people told me, if you were to say yes, you would build your entire building one shot, because, businesses were railing with questions of what happens to all the cash. And let's face reality. Every business had their cash.
Yes.
And that was a moment of dilemma which didn't need even more than a few seconds. I said, no, we're building a school. We're building something sacred. It's as good as a temple, right? Yeah. And we don't build it with people's black money.
Definitely.
And so we will accept checks. And of course, some parents said, at a time like this, where white money is hard and black money is easy, and if you were going to shut that door, you're going to get pretty much nothing. And I still remember that meeting. I finished the meeting and came and just sat down and was catching my breath because I felt it took a lot of vulnerability to meet the parents, show them our P&L, talk about our difficulties and invite them to support us. There was one father who came and he said, I want to see Sandhya. And I said, yes. And I remember seeing him in the group and I said, yes. And I didn't know, I thought he was going to ask doubts or whatever. And then he just came in and he said, I just went home and I came back. And I just wanted to see you for a minute. I said, yes. And he had a little envelope. And he had the first check of 1 lakh.
Wow.
And he said to me, I'm quickly bringing this check to you because I want you to know that there are people like me in this circle for whom this dream means a lot, for whom this must succeed. And I'm leaving this with you so that when you go for other meetings, you have that faith with you.
Were you emotional?
Yeah, I felt really moved, I was so moved. I still, recently when we celebrated 15 years, I told him, I showed the envelope I still have and I said, see, this is what you gave me. And he said, what, really? I said, yeah, acts of kindness. And then in the following days and weeks, we had so many meetings, after which in 3 weeks' time, we had these 180 or 90 envelopes coming back from parents. Checks of 1 lakh or more or less. And more than that, there were people who wrote letters. People who said, my mom has cancer and I'm struggling. I would have liked to give you at least 50,000 because I believe in this so much. But I'm so financially locked, I can't give you. But I still want you to know that our love is with you. So I think that story taught me, of course, how to be vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you are truly authentic and people can see that authenticity. And that was so beautiful. I'll always carry that. The second thing I learned was when a dream is really not about you, but it's about shaping something for a community, I think everyone feels it's their dream.
Yeah.
So I often feel like now there's so much like I'm credited too much for just being the dreamer. But it's really a shared dream. And today, I think there's so many people, teachers, parents who see it as their dream. And yesterday, one of my grade 12 students, he wrote me a letter. Mm-hmm. And in it, he said, the little things that we did in class, I never knew its meaning, like when we would read poetry every day or when we would light a candle or when we would just go back to our breathing. I never knew the meaning of all these things. But as I'm graduating and I'm 18, I'm beginning to see slowly the value of these things. And he said to me, I don't feel like a student here. I feel like I'm a part of this community. I'm shaping this dream. And he said, this is it. This is what it is. It isn't one person's dream. It is a shared dream. And it is, I think, a very universal dream because it places childhood at the heart of this. Yeah.
So it was it was a story with so many emotions into it. And it's a story that tells still humanity is alive.
There's goodness and humanity is alive.
Yeah. So before we could approach you, actually there's a small story of why we came approaching you for a podcast. The name was very fascinating. Yellow Dragon. Yeah. So how did that come into the picture and what is the story behind that?
Yeah, I think it's one question that I'm asked in every forum where I go to, either educators or any group. So of course, the story of Toto-chan is so much a part of our DNA. And the story is set in the background of the Second War. And the headmaster, Sasako Kobayashi, he's taken an abandoned railroad carriage and converted that into, I could almost say, a secret school. And the school is bombed during the war, and Tetsuko or Toto-chan, who's an adult survivor, goes in search of the children who survived the war and wonders what gave these children the resilience, hope, faith, courage, and traces it all back to the headmaster and his love for children. So I think this whole idea of a school in a railroad carriage is such an essential part of the dreaming itself in my story. And when I had to, build the school, of course, the first question was, what would we call it? Yeah. And I actually didn't start with the name Yellow Train in my head. I thought for some reason a very profoundly meaningful Sanskrit name. So I was, writing names like Shloka or names Prakriti or names that had a profound and deeply anchored in our tradition, a Vedic name. Yeah. And it seemed like beautiful. It met me. It was lofty, but it wasn't playful enough. And I think for me, sometimes I feel like I get inspired when something is playful. And this wasn't playful. It was profound. So I said, train needs to be honored. So train came, and then, I looked at the color of sunshine, and my own sanguine personality is very much like sunshine. So I just said Yellow Train. And I told myself, and then I wrote Yellow Train, and a part of me was saying, that's foolish. I mean, you can't call a school Yellow Train. And a part of me was saying, well, this laptop is called Apple, and therefore a school can be called Yellow Train. And so I just left it at that, And then what I did was, I was living in Chennai at that time, and I went to a little park that evening, and children were playing, and I just asked them, like, how do you like this name? Like Shloka or Prakriti. I had all these Sanskrit names, and I placed it, and they said, yeah, it's nice, it sounds nice. Or they were indifferent to me. They were playing, they were building their sandcastles. And then suddenly I said, how do you like this name, Yellow Train? So then suddenly they're like, I went to Trichy and I went to see my party, and then there was like this tomato soup that I love, or I love standing by and watching the rain, and like so many stories, and somebody else came from somewhere and said something. And then I just realized this name lends itself to a story that excites children. Their eyes have come alive, and their soul has come alive, and they've got a story. So I said it has to be Yellow Train. And of course, in the beginning, there was reactions from people who was like, it's weird. Yeah. And they said, like, little kids are going to love it. And as the school was shaping up and becoming a grade school and becoming a high school where adolescent children are studying, there was this question, so will you call it something else now? Because, who wants to go to a high school that's called Yellow Train? Yeah. And then we talked, and like most people said, no, we want to go to a high school also that's called Yellow Train. So I think, it was the name itself, but I also think what we've given that name. Yeah, both.
I feel there too, you have again put the children's interest in front. And was this bogie which you have set up here as a library? Yeah, it's very innovative. So did that does that got something to do with the name of your school, or is it just that?
I think bogie came many years later. Okay. Yeah, in the earlier years in the kindergarten, we had a small train which we made. And that train is, I think, now retiring. It's really rusted and retiring. But the bogie came many years later. It came in 2018. So by which time, this still had already become a large school. I think the name of the train was really a tribute to the headmaster and the school that fed my imagination so much in my early years. I mean, now if I look at myself in the last 10 years, my reading has meandered into a lot of different philosophies, and of course a lot of Rudolf Steiner and mold of education and anthroposophy, but also many other eclectic, methods and pedagogy that I constantly study and feel inspired by. But I think in my earliest formative years of dreaming and shaping the idea of what school life will be, I think a lot of it was Toto-chan. And if I look at the practices of what the children love the most, I think some of it is straightly out of the book. Yeah. So I think Yeah, a lot of the school, Tomoe Gakko and then Tuto-chan has really fed itself to the Yellow Train and its forming.
You seem to be a voracious reader, got some amazing collection. And I see you have a very innovative, creative library as well.
Yes.
But when you look at today's world, it's more of gadgets. And it's more of, reading is actually fading away. And you being an educationalist, how do you tell your students or how do you tell the younger generation to still stay intact with the habit of reading? So does Yellow Train do something to keep the reading habit still alive?
Lots and lots and lots of things. Because I think, someone who's not a reader is not a reader because they didn't meet a book that they fell in love with. They didn't fall in love and they didn't become a reader. And I think that's the task of a school and an educator to say what would excite you. Yeah, and to constantly bring. And I think at this school, the first thing is, of course, our bogie, which is filled with books, is sitting at the heart of the school. But I think beyond that, as teachers, we are all lovers of books.
Yeah.
So in fact, this morning I was looking up the dates for Bangalore Lit Fest because I want to take my high school students there. So we're constantly looking at, 2 days ago, we all spent a night at the school with grade 10 because I gave them a challenge and I said to them that they must read 1 book this term. And they surpassed my expectations. And as a whole class, everybody read 2 books in 1 term. And I said, okay, we celebrated and what shall we do? They said, we'd spend a night at the school. So we spent a night at the school. So I think constantly we are looking for ways in which we can thrust a book into the hand of the child.
Yes.
And I think that starts right from kindergarten where we bring stories alive for them, early grades. And it has been something that we have never retired from that task of, inviting children into the fold of books time and time and time again. So we bring authors to school. We have books for every month. We have dear time, which means drop everything and read. So there's a time in the period which is dear time where everybody drops everything and just reads. There's, of course, visit to the bogie. So I think their life is filled with books and readers. So I think that's shaping them. And at the Yellow Train, we don't have this trouble that children aren't reading. Because I think children are reading and they're reading. They used to have something called a reading passport. So you started from one continent and you finished in another continent, and every 100 books or 100 pages you read, you got these many miles and you had to travel some, 62,000 miles, whatever. And then, the children who read the most the school went and set up little libraries in their homes.
Wow.
And then after some time, they said, hey, why should we do it as competition? We shouldn't. Yeah, why should you compete to read? That was a bad idea. So we said, okay, let's now make it like collectively, everybody together reads 100 books. So I think, whether our methods were pedagogically right or not, I think we find any method and every method that can get our children to read. And that's been very heartwarming because I feel as a teacher, if you've succeeded in getting a child to fall in love with books, half your job is done. They're going to be lifelong learners. They're going to learn anything they want at any time in their lives. And I think that's a gift we must give our children.
Definitely, yeah. And you have a curriculum which is very different.
Yeah.
And you follow the teaching methods, the teaching techniques, which doesn't match the traditional method of learning.
Yeah.
So, of course, there'll be a lot of challenges, like as in the teachers need to get themselves prepped for the vision which you are expecting.
Yeah.
So, how does Yellow Train stand apart from the other schools? Like, just a few words about it.
Yeah, inherently, somehow, I'm not so comfortable with comparisons because I feel maybe I can explain pursuit of Yellow Train. What's, I think, important here is the religion of childhood is at the heart of everything. I think oftentimes it seems like how else can it be? How else should it be? It's commonsensical. That's what one tends to think, but it's not that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think we study child development. It's part of human development. And you understand some things that are really essence of education that's constructed on understanding the essence of child. And our curriculum, World of Education especially, works with the child's development. So everything that we do is done in a certain manner because it is founded on the developmental stage of the child. So if a child is learning fractions at a certain age, it's because we understand the child is ready developmentally to work with that. Or if the child is working with fairy tales in grade 1 and we only introduced letters and numeracy and all of that only in grade 1, it's because we feel that in early years they are not ready for any kind of abstract knowledge. So a lot of our curriculum, or right now, for instance, as we are speaking, Naman, the speaker who is actually a criminal lawyer from the High Court, he's met the children and spoken to them for a whole hour and a half. And when I met my grade 12 students and asked them how was the talk, one of the students, she just did this and she said, my gut is churning. He's making me feel uncomfortable. And I said, why are you so uncomfortable? She said, in his own way, he talked about how the constitution, the legal system, the politicians, the bureaucracy, and everything is falling apart. And it looks like I can't even contribute to anything anymore. And I'm uncomfortable with that. And I feel, yes, you have to get uncomfortable with that because reality is so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you don't want to protect the children from feeling uncomfortable. Because when we take children for community service and then they go to a home and when they see that, hey, these children don't have anything here and we have this kind of education. And you can look at the privilege and loss of privilege and this is in the same city, right? And it makes you uncomfortable. And I think in education, you have to make people uncomfortable.
True.
But of course, in early childhood, you don't want to make the children uncomfortable, right? So sometimes I think World of Education and Yellow Train's work is not easily understood because it looks like, oh, children are just happy.
Yeah.
Children are just having fun. They love to go to school. I think there's more than that. Yeah? There is a wisdom of what we introduce at what age and why.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the compass, which is the development of human being or a child that guides us. And I think that's what differentiates our approach from another approach that says, you have to get this mark in grade 12 in order to get this job, and therefore you need to do this in grade 8, and therefore you need to do this in grade 6, and therefore you need to do something in grade 1. I think that's a more factory-based approach today, which a lot of schools unfortunately are following.
Yeah. That is actually something where still parents need to come out of that stereotypical educational system and look at the broader picture.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you a spiritual person?
Yeah, deeply. I think that's like the first identity that I feel the closest to, which is the spiritual part of me.
And how does that impact or come into the environment of Yellow Tree?
Yeah, I think as teacher body, we are all at some level deeply spiritually anchored. And when I say spirituality, I think it's not religion, because I think religion divides and spirituality unites. So it's really, a bed on which a lot of the work that we teachers do is resting on. And every day in the morning, we all have something called a Sangha.
Okay.
Where we come together, we meditate, we say a verse, we read a little bit. So that's our anchoring space. So there is a lot of that spiritual essence in what we do with the children. And as far as the children are concerned, I think there's no indoctrination of any idea. And yet they're here and it's like osmosis, right? So they're breathing that in. So I'm imagining that a lot of that is actually going into the children.
Now that Yellow Train has been recognized nationally and internationally as well, and that's again, you are bound to set more standards, and that is a kind of a challenge for you, because you have to keep giving out something. The expectations are set so high. So, looking ahead, is there any new projects or initiatives which Yellow Train is going to undertake, or anything, something interesting coming up?
Recently we had this 15 years of Yellow Train Gallery, and we had this big, picture of BFG, Roald Dahl's creation and his dream jar. So we had about 15 dream jars, and we had articulated some dreams, and we'd asked the community and the children to drop the scenes which they would like to see manifest.
Wow.
And we also had a dream jar where they could drop their dreams. So some of the dreams that came from the community, where the lot of seeds were there. The first one was residential school, and I think constantly people have been asking that. So it's a small seed somewhere lying in waiting. When will it manifest? I don't know. Hopefully very soon. I think there was also one where we want to work with the children in the Mudalipalem village.
Okay.
Because we feel committed to this village. Our school is in this village, and our bus and all of us come through the village every day, and we know that the children of this village receive a different kind of education, and we want to collaborate, contribute, and also give back to the village and their children. So that's something that we attempted, we failed, but that's a strong desire. So yeah, and there are small dreams which children have dropped a lot of jars, like bicycles in the farm and, coffee for high schoolers.
Okay.
So these are all their interests, but I think these are some of the areas that, and a student exchange program for the high schoolers. So these are some of the things that have generated a lot of excitement in the community.
So I think the upcoming years we could get all that. I think Yellow Train is planning to implement that.
Yeah, so imagining slowly.
Yeah. So I think from the whole team of HOK are good wishes and good vibes for all of us to be accomplished.
Thank you.
So now that your school has been showered with so many awards, and you as a person has been, you've got so many awards. So tell us some moments where when you received those awards, how did you feel, or your emotion at that time? Something which really touched your heart, which is close to your heart. One moment.
I don't know, I have a very different relationship with this, because I feel that oftentimes I receive more light than many other people who are laboring for this dream. So I feel all the awards are really about the school itself and to the school community. And somehow those spaces are not where I'm very comfortable. So I'm really awkward and trying to hide myself somewhere. I think it's just a personal challenge, maybe. But that's at one level. But another level, I feel this is really a validation for the alternate school movement.
True.
That there are so few of us in the country, and that number is growing, where we are wanting to offer alternatives to mainstream thinking, belief and ideology in education. And when those spaces shine, I think it means something for the whole community of educators and families that trust that there is another way to hold a child and educate a child. So from that place, I feel deeply reassured and moved that these spaces and communities are getting a recognition on national or international platforms. So that's what touches my heart.
Yeah. So this is something, coming to the end of our session, this is something where I ask all of my guests.
Yeah.
How special is Coimbatore to you?
Yeah, I think I came to Coimbatore with a lot of misgiving and uncertainty about how this city will receive my idea. And having spent 15 years here, I feel a lot of gratitude. I think the people here, the community that we work with, are very grounded, anchored. The agrarian roots of families that are the people of the land, I think that shows up in their simplicity, in just the beauty of their simple living. And in that sense, I feel a lot of not just gratitude, but a lot of reciprocity to what we have given and what the community has given us. So there's a lot of respect for the people of this land.
Lovely, lovely. And now coming to now we're going to wind up our session. I must say, Santhya, that this journey of yours and Yellow Train, it's been so awe-inspiring. And I'm sure this tale, this story, this journey of yours is definitely going to plant a seed of entrepreneurship in many people's mind. And the way you are treating the students, the educational curriculum, or whatsoever, your teachers, your infrastructure, environmentally, it's so environment friendly, your campus. I think you are not just sending out graduates or, high school graduates. You are actually sending out amazing citizens. And that's an incredible job that you've been doing. So from the team of HOK, we wish you success and only success in your upcoming endeavors. And thank you so much taking out your time and, being so patiently answering all of our questions. And it is definitely an honor having you on our show. And thank you so much, Sandhya. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention and love on Yellow Train.
Wasn't that just awe-inspiring and amazing, the journey of Mrs. Santhya Vikram and the success of Yellow Train? That's a wrap for today. Stay tuned for more amazing journeys to humans of Kovai. See you next time. Take care.